In this week's episode, I'm rewinding through my life and counting down the top 10 most important moments that shaped me as a writer. I'm starting with the present and moving backward. I've already shared number 10, and that was the experience with my biological father. It confirmed why I'm a writer in the first place. Stay tuned to find out the rest. I'm Michael Laron, and this is the Writer's Journey podcast, where you get a window into the life of a working science fiction and fantasy author. I'm on a mission to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I share my progress and discover what inspires my books and how I write them. You can find the show notes for today's episode at michaellaron.com/podcast. This week, I'm taking you behind the scenes of my writing process. Hello and welcome to episode 11. This week, I thought I'd spend some time talking about critical events in my life that made me the artist I am today. I already mentioned in the intro that number 10 was the search for my biological father. I talked about that in episode 5, Searching for My Biological Father. So if you haven't heard that one, be sure to give it a listen at michaellaron.com/episode 5. Moving on to number 9, that would be taking courses with Dean Wesley Smith at WMG Publishing. If you've never heard of Dean, he's a USA Today best-selling author and the guy who wrote all the Star Trek books that I read when I was growing up. He's a prolific writer and his courses are jam-packed with amazing advice that have taken my craft to the next level. I'll drop a link to his website in the show notes, but suffice to say that taking his courses expanded my mind and helped me understand writing on a deeper level. Moving on to number 8, and that is reading the works of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was a Hindu monk who lived in the 1800s and early 1900s, and he was responsible for introducing the Western world to Hindu spirituality and philosophy. Sometime in 2011, I stumbled upon his complete works, and I was completely blown away at how he saw the world. Some of the things he preaches are mantras that I live by daily. In fact, if you delved into the philosophical undercurrents of my stories, you would find that they center on many of Vivekananda's key assumptions about spirituality. I talk more about Swami Vivekananda in my book, Be a Writing Machine, so be sure to check out the link in the show notes if you want to know more about how he developed me as a writer. Number 7 is discovering the works of Ray Bradbury. I picked up Fahrenheit 451 in 2010 on a whim, and my life was never the same. The way that Bradbury wrote, it was like music, like pure intoxication. I told myself that if I could ever be half the writer he was, then I would be somebody. His prose was beautiful, so imaginative and evocative, while still having a fast-moving story. I strove to find that balance in my own work, and I was also blown away by Bradbury's prolific nature. I, too, wanted to be an author with hundreds of works on the shelf. Something about Bradbury's personality just clicked with me. It told me that it was okay to write a lot of stuff, and it was okay to write different stuff, too. A great book that outlines many of Bradbury's philosophies about the world is Listen to the Echoes, the Ray Bradbury interviews. It's essential reading for any Ray Bradbury fan. Links are in the show notes. And as we come to the end of this week's episode, we'll end with number 6, and that is learning how to speak Spanish. Spanish, you ask? Yes, I am bilingual. I started speaking Spanish in the 7th grade. I wanted to take a shop class for my elective, but it was full, so my guidance counselor forced me to take Spanish, and I went into that classroom kicking and screaming. It ended up being one of the top 10 moments of my life. I majored in Spanish in college, and I studied abroad in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Panama. My first job out of college was a bilingual claims adjuster for a Fortune 100 insurance company. I was way in over my head, but I took the leap of faith. I became fluent on the job, and there were many days where I spoke nothing but Spanish. I did this for nearly 5 years. Honestly, my love with Spanish could be a podcast episode in and of itself. Why did this impact me as a writer, though? Because I learned the nuances of another culture and how easy it is for things to get lost in translation. Writers are translators. We translate the language of the mind into something that readers can see, feel, and experience. In order to keep people reading, though, we have to translate what's in our head and hearts and color it so that it means something to the person on the other side of the page. Often, writers think that they're doing that, but they're actually falling short. Learning to speak Spanish on a practical level helped me see weaknesses in my storytelling in a different way, and it taught me how to shore up those weaknesses so that I could start speaking to people on their level. That's it for this week's episode. In a future behind-the-scenes episode, I'll go over the top 5 moments that shaped me as a writer, and those events are even more life-changing. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed the show, here are a couple ways to help a brother out. If you're listening to this on Anchor, favorite the show. If you're listening to this on a podcast app, do me a favor and write me a review and share it with your friends. You can, of course, visit my website and learn more about my work at michaelloran.com. If you have a question, send me a voice message on Anchor and you just might hear it on the show. Next week, I'll be giving an update on what I'm currently working on, and I'll be answering your questions. Until then, I leave you with a quote. This world is but a canvas to our imagination. Henry David Thoreau.